I'm your host, Vanessa Emerson, founder of Dental Speakers Bureau, and today I'm super excited to be here with Katrina Sanders and a special guest. Hey, Katrina.
Hi, how are you today?
Awesome. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I want to introduce the world to Huey
Hey,
Sanders.
Yuri.
I promise there's a reason why Huey's here, and we'll talk about that later. But Huey's joining us on today's episode of The Buzz.
Is his middle name Lewis?
It, it should be Huey
It should
Lewis.
be.
Huey.
So, Katrina Sanders, many of you probably know, and Katrina speaks on infection control and microbiology and is a practicing clinician at Arizona Perio, which has AZ Perio, which is the country's largest group perio practice. She also works as a consultant to help support dental practices around the country. So today we wanted to get together to talk about infection control with obviously the state of the world with the COVID-19 virus situation, and just want to come together and share some facts and some tips to help dental practices and support them in this time. So thank you again, Katrina, for being here and for bringing Huey along.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much. As I'm sure many of us in the industry are experiencing right now, we are either in an issued or a self-imposed quarantine. So I'm the latter. And so because of that, I think it's so nice to be able to connect with each other over a platform like this. So I'm grateful to be a part of it. And I'm excited to be able to share some of the pieces of information that I've researched over the past week with regards to, COVID-19, which seems to be the buzz topic right now.
Yeah.
And the response that I think the dental community needs to start having about that. So I'm grateful to be here. It's timely, it's important, and it's something that I'm grateful to be a part of.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us. I see we have Alan. Hey, Alan, thanks for joining
in. Hello.
Alan Stern. And as you join in, please feel free to say hello. We'd love to see you in the comments. And if you have a question for Katrina, please note it there and we'll be sure we get your question addressed. So maybe before we start with what we recommend, could we do a little history on pandemics and
yeah.
Bring us, from the past up to the present. Is there anything there that would be important for us to know?
Yeah. So I thank you for asking that. It's COVID-19 is interesting because what we're learning about COVID-19 is really being done. We're kind of building the plane as it's flying, so to speak. And so the best way for us to evaluate infection control standards and the best ways for us to manage this disease is to take a look at a history over time, to be able to look at some of the infections that have swept through countries or infections that have swept through the globe and how we've responded and what has been successful for us. As most people know, I would bet most infection control and microbiology experts would say that the biggest pandemic to date would be the Black Death or the bubonic plague, which we estimate anywhere between 200 million people died from over a span of hundreds of years. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing for people to think about because, gosh, COVID-19 has been circulating since November, December of 2019, and it's almost April and half of us are losing our minds. Can you imagine hundreds of years this disease kept propagating? And from the bubonic plague, we learned a lot about society. We learned a lot about ways to control infection. One of those ways was quarantine. And so homes that were quarantined, there was a Red Cross that went above your door at that time. And that indicated to anybody in the town that the individuals inside were being quarantined. There were doctors or seekers of the sick that would wear, we've seen images of them. They would have the big cane and the long beak, and they would be fully covered. And so that was the first kind of understanding of PPE. Interestingly enough, the reason why they had that beak, because I always thought that's so weird. Why would you, they had that beak because they would put inside of that beak what's called a nosegay. That is a little satchel of petals and herbs, because people were dying in the streets. And so the streets were just rancid with that smell. And so in order for them to go out into the streets, they had to wear that mask that had, a pleasant aroma. It was the Febreze of the turn of the century.
There you go.
So, isn't that interesting? And they would go into homes and they had that stick because they would poke people. That's how they would evaluate them, to evaluate if they maybe had succumbed to the bubonic plague. What we found was that there were several initiatives that were done to help control the bubonic plague. And one of them was Lord Mayor, who kind of presided over everything at the time, had initiated that the women were to essentially provide healthcare services in the community, and men were hired to kill all of the stray dogs and cats in the streets, because it was assumed that the dogs and the cats in the street could have been part of the propagation of the bubonic plague. What we found now, years later, is that most of us believe that the bubonic plague was actually propagated by fleas on rats. There are some theories that that's not necessarily the case, but the most popular theory is that it was propagated by fleas on rats. And so why do I have Huey here? Because Huey is he's a Chihuahua Dachshund mix. So he's got a little bit of Dachshund in him. And anybody who has a Dachshund knows that Dachshunds are little hunters. Before Huey goes to bed, he digs a little hole of china. He's always out in the backyard, hunting birds, hunting lizards, bringing them in. He looks very sweet and innocent, but he's actually a little hunter. And one of the interesting initiatives was, after all the dogs and the cats in the streets were killed, they found there was a huge increase in the bubonic plague. You see, the dogs and cats in the streets were working to control those rats. So what Lord Mayor did was they essentially released a bunch of dachshunds into the streets of London. And these dachshunds hunted the rats that carried the fleas that essentially propagated the bubonic plague. So because of Huey's ancestors, we were able to eradicate the bubonic plague. So round of applause for Huey and his ancestors.
And it goes to show that fear, and you start trying to find something that might feel logical. And we saw a little of that in China with people throwing animals over their balconies and stuff, which is it's just so unfortunate. But I'm glad that cooler heads are now prevailing.
Absolutely. And I think that's, the mass hysteria, it has evolved over time as well. The next major infection that I think really changed a lot of what it is that we do in dentistry and what it is that we understood about the propagation of disease was, of course, the HIV and AIDS. We could call it a pandemic, I suppose. In fact, I was at a CE program 2 weeks ago, and I was speaking with a hygienist who has been practicing, she said, for about 40, almost 50 years she's been practicing. And I made a comment. I said, oh gosh, so you were practicing when hygienists were wearing skirts and little hats. And we started to talk about infection control. And she said, I was practicing when, we were not wearing gloves and we were not wearing masks in dentistry. And, when I speak on infection control, I'll ask, how many of you practiced at a time? I remember I went to a pediatric hygienist, but my pediatric hygienist didn't wear a mask and gloves, until we had, hit the early to mid 90s. And so it was really this HIV and AIDS pandemic that gave a call to action, that advised the dental and the medical communities that we needed to be more mindful of how we are stopping the spread of infection or interrupting the chain of infection, and the ways that we can better serve the community. And that started it. And then we moved, of course, into identifying, early detection for these diseases to also stop the propagation of the disease process. So interestingly enough, we've been able to look at a lot of these diseases over time and institute a lot of those infection control pieces. For us today with COVID-19, we are looking at diseases like SARS and MERS, other strains of diseases that have been spread via, respiratory or through an airborne experience. We're learning now that COVID-19 can live on contact surfaces. So of course, this creates the mass hysteria with everyone buying up hand sanitizers and buying out bleach and Lysol wipes and all of these things, because we're recognizing that it is important for us to maintain a sense of cleanliness. And it's interesting that we've come back full circle on that at the end of the day, what we did with the bubonic plague, with quarantine, with hygiene, with PPE, those are the things that we're still instilling today in 2020.
Because they work, right? I'm thinking as you, thank you. That's like such an interesting history lesson.
Yeah, thank you.
It also makes me think how we learn so much too through the practical application when really our lives are at stake, and what a resilient race we are on this planet. As a human race, we really, we bond together, we find solutions, we grow stronger again. And I have no doubt that after this, it will be very much different, but there's no way we won't be stronger and know more about what we need to do in the future. But before we talk about future, could you bring us more to the present moment? What is it that dental practices need to know right now? We know that many of our colleagues are not able to practice, mandated to close emergencies only, and many of our dental colleagues are not working at the moment. And what a great time for them to be learning and be prepared. I keep thinking about it as when we get the go-ahead to get back to the office, I would love to see them be able to hop on that horse at a gallop.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's start that ramp up now. Tell us, what do we need to be doing now?
I love that. So yes, there are so many states right now where hygienists and doctors and assistants are either on furlough, maybe even have been laid off. And that has been instituted because either the doctor or practice owners been prophylactic and preventive in closing down the practice, or as we've seen in the state of Arizona, as of this Saturday, we're being advised that any non-emergent procedures be postponed until further notice. So there are several things that can be done. I think one of the things that we need to remember in dentistry is that we are here to serve the community. And that doesn't necessarily just mean the skills that we have in our hands. We are here to serve the community from an educational standpoint. We are here to serve the community from a supportive standpoint, from a quality of life standpoint. All of those are opportunities for us to be able to step in. And so I wanted to share one of the things I just a couple of hours ago got off of a conference call with the hygiene team at AZ Perio. And one of the things that they're doing that I almost got choked up. It just warmed my heart that they shared was, we put our patients first and we want to make sure that we're taking care of them. So the hygiene team is calling their columns of patients we're not having a front office team do it. We're not having, a electronic service do it. We are calling our patients one by one and not just saying we need to unfortunately reschedule your appointment. This is a government issued piece in Arizona, but rather they're saying, how are you doing?
How are you? Yeah.
Tell me about, yes, because we've learned, for example, with COVID-19, that patients, for example, that are hypertensive or diabetic, patients that chronically take NSAIDs, particularly ones that inhibit angiotensin converting enzymes, those are individuals who are at an elevated risk for contracting that, which unfortunately in a perio practice, that's a large population of our patients. So we are calling patients and saying, how are you? What can we do for you? Are you okay on your medications? Can we help connect you to a pharmacy delivery service? How are you doing on oral hygiene supplies? Now more than ever, anything we can do to control inflammation or infection in your mouth is going to be imperative. Can we mail you toothbrushes, toothpaste, floss? How can we help? And the thing is, at the end of the day, when we talk about mass hysteria, what AZ Perio was doing is to be the opposite of that, to acknowledge that we need to be safe and take care of our patients, but we can be a beacon of hope. We can be a light for them and let them know that we are here for you. Unfortunately, we do have to reschedule you, but you know what? The moment that we get over this hump and we get through this, we're here for you. So I think that's step one. That's huge. And even prior to that, we had specific algorithms. We had, if the patient was recently traveling in Europe, if they were recently, here, if they were over this age, if they had these comorbidities, those were things that we were discussing. And then based on that patient's risk, we were making the decision whether it was safe or not, to be able to proceed forward. I see here Alan Stern actually shares that they too are calling all of their patients, and it's just a true amazing gesture for the patients. So I agree, and I love that you're doing that. So thank you for sharing that. So I would say that's a huge piece.
Let me just jump in on that too, Katrina, before we go on to the other points, because I'm thinking practically. Okay, so like we're right now in the middle of a very emotional, unique time where we definitely want to be nurturing and caring. And the reality is, as business owners, we want to be able to get back to a time where those patients will then come in for their normal care. And for everyone, I mean, airlines, hotels, everybody involved, we want to be, this is not the reason we do it, but here's what I've learned over the 20 years I've been working in the dental industry is the more we give away, the more we nurture, the more we help, the more your patients will then see you guys as the go-to practice. And so it's so smart I feel a little uncomfortable pointing that out, but I think it's an important piece of this is that we all have to be able to get back to where we make money again. Yeah. Or companies will go out of business. And so so not only is it a super service for our patients, but it's an essential piece of this so that we keep them in the best possible health. And then ultimately they know that you really care. I mean, that's how you get patients for life.
Absolutely.
I was just thinking, nobody's called me like that.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. Yes. Absolutely. It's so funny. I have she's like my Arizona mom. We all of us kids grew up together.
No. I'll be your sister.
You're my everywhere mom. Yeah, you're my sister. But she's my brother's best friend's mom, and we all grew up in the Midwest. And then she actually moved down to Arizona. At any rate, today she's a pharmacist. Today she sends me a text message and she's like, "Hey, I just made my own hand sanitizer. So if you need any, like bring a bottle by and whatever." And I actually happen to be good on hand sanitizer. I actually, before all this happened, I bought a bunch of it at Bath and Body Works. So I'm good.
We always have a bunch.
I'm concerned to say that though. I feel like people are going to break in my house now and steal all my sanitizer. But I said to her, I thank you so much. And then I realized, like, in this time of need, when people are walking into grocery stores and just kind of grabbing whatever, and not being mindful of other people and what their needs might be, here she is, reaching out and saying, here's what I have. And I think it's creating a lot more awareness. It's showing you the people who really have their heart in this, which I just think is such a beautiful thing. So to all the people that are out there, my assistant, Steven, said yesterday he was at the grocery store, and there was one gentleman behind the counter at the deli that he had all of these turkey breasts that normally they would put on a rotisserie and then, put out. And nobody else was coming into work. He was the only one. And he's like, "I have these defrosted turkey breasts. I have to cook them. The community needs them." And so what a hero, you know what I mean? Like I think we need to look around and find those beautiful sparkling lights of people that are taking this and giving their hearts and giving what they can. And those are things in the dental community that we can do for our patients. We can instill them with hope. Because you're right, we need to get ready to get back into clinical practice. We're itching to get back into clinical practice. And so I think the next layer to that is, are we prepared to work extended hours for our patients who may have also been out of work? Our patients who, by the way, maybe need to get back into work and so can't take time off to go to their dental appointments. Can we extend our hours? Can we open up a Saturday so that we can accommodate these people who have been offset by some of the shifts that have happened from an economic standpoint? So I think there are ways for us as a dental industry to take a look at how we can really support the dental patient. And I do think that hygienists, doctors, assistants who are now not, bringing in a paycheck will appreciate having some extended hours in the next, who knows how long this is going to go. But I do think that there's a huge appreciation there for that being an opportunity. And of course, during this time when everybody's down and stuck in their homes, definitely finding opportunities to continue your education, whether that be, I mean, somebody was posting the other day that there are Ivy League schools that post free online courses. Take some online courses. If you're a hygienist or an assistant in the practice and you're concerned about, your hours or what that might look like, take some marketing classes, learn about social media, propose to your doctor that, hey, I'm ready to help us get back on the horse. Write a little newsletter or a blog post for your office about, nutrition, wellness, about ways to stay healthy during a difficult season. I mean, there's so many creative ways for us to continue to stay relevant and to continue to stay connected to our patients and to our offices. So those would be my suggestions, right out in front. And then, of course, on a personal side, I'm in a state where I wanted to clean out my closet for forever.
Right.
And I'm finally doing that. I wanted to clean my garage. I did that. I organized all of my dresser drawers. I'm every day I'm going through something else. And I know it sounds silly, but we've all learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that the best way for us to serve others is for us to be in a place of security and safety. We all know that, when our scrubs are pressed and clean and fresh out of the dryer and we're well hydrated and we have nutritious foods and we've slept well, that we are a better version of ourselves for our patients. So how can we take this time while we're down, while we're not working, to make ourselves a better version of ourselves so that when we step back into patient care that we're ready?
And I would add to that too. I think that's all so relevant and helpful. Thank you. And I would add to be mindful of our mindset, because
Yes.
I think it's really easy, especially if we don't have a busy to-do list that day, to get sucked into the information that's out there and all the different opinions and watching the news and watching the stock market. I was listening to Fred Joyle put together his top 10. I don't know if you saw that on LinkedIn.
Oh, no.
I'll have to find it and post it here in the comments. It was brilliant. I need to tell Fred. And one of the things was, he said, you don't need to be checking the stock market every 10 minutes unless you're a day trader.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not going to pull your money out anyway. You're not losing anything. Just let it be. And I think it's really about us having to have a little bit of self-discipline about a certain time of day to check in on it, or maybe it's morning and night. But what I have found is really helpful for me is to just, it's actually helpful to be isolated, because you don't have all the voices around you, and you can kind of control what's in your mind better. Yeah. Put on a meditation, put on something like Calm. And then this is a perfect time for dental professionals who think they would like to maybe speak and consult, to sit down and look at a life vision, start determining what they want to do around their speaking and consulting. I mean, there's so many different ways you can look at it. It's a perfect time for a practice to make changes to their website.
Yes.
With all these projects, just like cleaning out the dresser drawers,
yes,
that we have for the practice, it's the perfect time to be able to, I would imagine it's a time even to do some tidying around the practice. It'd be a good time to do some painting or something.
I literally thought that as you said that. I mean, from a social media standpoint, I'm just putting myself in the seat of a patient, right? And here's my dental office posting a video of the hygienists, the assistants, the doctors in the practice, gloved up with cavi wipes, just sanitizing everything. I mean, and we're going to talk about this in a moment, but moving forward, there are going to be some very strict expectations about what it is the dental community is going to do to respond from an infection control standpoint. If we can control some of that already, if we can show our patients on the front end, these are the things that we're doing to prepare for you, so that when we're ready to treat you again, we have all of this and it's prepared and it's done. I love that.
So maybe we could move into that. So we've talked about the past and great examples from the past and what we've learned, and we know we're going to learn from this. Yes. No doubt. We've talked about Oh, here comes winter.
There's your furry.
I don't really have a good story for which side is it for cats,
your furry.
but here's our our visual. Winter is coming. Winter is here.
Yeah.
But so we talked about the past and what we learned there. We talked about what can we do now in the present. But if we have a looking glass, if we can look ahead to, we don't really know. Like I've been using the example, we're in a Yahtzee cup, and pretty soon somebody will roll out those dice, and then we'll figure out where we're at. Right now, we're just still trying to figure out where we're going to end up.
Yeah.
Because we're definitely not at a peak yet. It doesn't feel like, and so we're not on the backside of this yet. So we don't know exactly. But if we had that magic looking glass, Katrina, what do we need to do? How do we need to be prepared for the future? Can you give us an idea? What does that look like in dentistry moving forward?
Well, in order to share that, I think I have to begin with a dirty little secret. That
a dirty little joke for a minute. This is not the place.
I got lots of dirty jokes, but no, I do. I need to share a dirty little secret.
I'm turning as red as my shirt.
And I stole dirty little secret. I coined that from Marianne Dreyer because she's so funny and I love that she does that. But it's a dirty little secret. It's something that everybody in dentistry knows. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's saying it out loud, but we all know it and we can acknowledge it. And that is that most of us have not been doing our best with infection control, period. Even, I hate to say it, but we have this, because I was an educator for many years. I have a dental hygiene board prep program. I hate to say it, but if educators, faculty out there, you tell your students, well, this is how it is in school. And then there's the real world. And that line has gotten wider and wider. What our students learn in school as far as infection control standards, those are adjudicated by CODA, the Commission on Dental Accreditation. Those are based on the standards that are in our textbooks, the Darby, the Wilkins textbook, whatever our microbiome books are. Those standards that are expected of us when we're in school are the standards that should be maintained when we get out into clinical practice. The thing is, I walk into practices all day where, doctor's got the mask underneath his chin and he's walking up to the front desk, taking off his gloves. There are certain things that we've done over time where it has just been, we have loosened up. I'm reading articles right now. There's some incredible articles out that talk about the actual compliance of hand washing / utilization of hand sanitizer for dental professionals in the operatory. And it is unreal. The numbers that, the numbers of dental professionals on a routine basis who do not routinely use hand washing and or hand sanitizer while entering the room, leaving the room, treating a patient, putting gloves on, taking gloves off. The amount of my esteemed colleagues who are told, I get one mask a day. And we know that's not safe. We read about that. We have board prep questions on it. And yet here we are working in a practice. And we do feel like we're kind of selling our souls a little bit because we know this isn't right. But here we are wearing our one mask. Clinicians that use aerosol producing equipment. And that's going to be doctors' high-speed handpiece, the hygienists, Cavitron or piezo tip, the air polisher, all of those pieces. Are we using high-speed evacuation systems? How many of us are having our patients swish with a pre-procedural mouth rinse? Very hard to say very quickly, by the way. Swish with a pre-procedural mouth rinse before their dental procedures. These are things, again, that we learned in school. These are the gold standard. These are the expectations of the industry. But who's going into these offices with a checklist and saying, oh, you didn't have me swish with chlorhexidine. So, the patient doesn't know. And gosh, it has been time and again. One of the things that I do in my infection control program is I show some of the news videos that are out there of the doctors or oral surgery offices that have been non-compliant with infection control instrument processing that have now left patients having to get tested for HIV and Hep C. This moves us into something greater than ourselves, and that is the ethical principle of societal trust. When you ask patients, what do you think about when you think about a dentist? Most people will say pain, expensive. I can't tell you how many times when I open an instrument pack, now I work in the surgical op now, so most of my patients are asleep, but my patients who are not asleep, when I would open up my instrument pack, I get patients all the time saying, is that clean? right? And are they right to ask that? Of course they are. They're right to ask that because this is what they're seeing on the news. And now, gosh, you can't go on social media without seeing COVID-19 everywhere.
Yeah.
We need to know that when we step into clinical practice again, that patients are going to be, I implore you to consider perhaps the most hyper aware that they will ever be in the weeks and months following this. The expectations are through the roof that we're going to be protecting our patients and that we're going to be protecting ourselves. And that means that we need to be wearing the appropriate PPE. We need to be processing the equipment based on what the CDC tells us that we need to be processing. We need to be instilling these infection control standards that we've known to be true for a very long time. And I don't think there's going to be as much tolerance from dental professionals who know that this is wrong but are still doing it, and from the patients, from the community. I don't think there's going to be as much tolerance anymore to these little slip-ups in infection control. And so moving forward, I implore practices to lean on the resources that they have to be able to be mindful and to perhaps consider changing their infection control standards. Those are things that a hygienist or a lead assistant can do in the practice. They can be the infection control liaison or the infection control captain and build out what that protocol looks like. Be in charge of processing, testing the water supply, which should be done on a routine basis, sending out spore testing, checking to make sure that all of the equipment is functioning, ensuring that there's enough equipment so everything gets processed in between patients. All of those things are going to be vital. And there are incredible companies that are out there that have sales reps that are there with the resources ready to help you, to give you, on a silver platter, a lot of these protocols and to help guide you through them. So now more than ever, I implore dental practices to really sink their teeth, pun intended, sink their teeth into what this infection control standard will look like in their practice, knowing full well that patients are expecting that to be high level.
That's just like so much good stuff. I'm just going to break in for a second because I'm thinking, okay, so I hear you. I think this makes a lot of sense. Like I'm sure we're all hearing you going, okay, yeah, we need to do that. So let's talk for a moment about practically.
Yeah.
How do we make sure this happens? Because it's making me think, if I were the dentist who has had to, in effect, lay off people for a couple of weeks and maybe has a skeleton crew or not, but we're all self-isolating. I want to mention here, there are so many great virtual platforms out there, such as Zoom, which is a super low cost, to $15 a month or something like that, where you could get your entire team. You could have a virtual team meeting. You mentioned that there are resources out there where they would come and even talk to you. You have to know that there's got to be reps out there that would love to be able to come and work with your team. I mean, it's that, like, here's the 1, 2, 3 of how you get this done, doc, beforehand. You pick a day, pull your team together. Oh, how wonderful would that be anyway, to have a virtual meeting with your team and just check in on everyone. And part of that would be maybe some consistent ongoing weekly meetings with your team now while we're off, right? To keep everybody connected. I think the longer it goes each day that we're not going into the office together, the more we're going to be wondering. And, it's like the more the mind goes, it's such an important time for leadership in the practice to really step up and lead and bring our family together, our dental practice family, and check in. At least that's one thought that came to me. Do you have other thoughts on how do we practically ensure this happens beforehand?
I love what you just said, Vanessa, and to take that a step further, and because I am thinking about the patient service side of this, and still staying connected to your patients through these times. And as I mentioned earlier, what a valuable piece to post a Facebook Live of the people in your practice sanitizing everything, cleaning out the drawers, pulling everything out, wiping everything down. But even more than that, what about a Facebook Live of the doctor saying, hello, I'm Dr. Jones, and thank you to all of my my existing patients, potential future patients. Every day we're going to be featuring one new thing that we're going to to be integrating into our practice to protect you. So here today, we're going to talk about pre-procedure mouth rinses. Every time that you step into our operatory, you will be handed a cup with 15 milliliters of mouth rinse. This is a high level, broad spectrum antimicrobial. It is going to sanitize anything in your mouth. It's going to help to reduce the amount of bacteria, viruses, funguses that could be leached out into the air. And it's going to not only protect our staff, but it's going to protect you, and it's going to potentially protect the other patients in the practice. So look forward to your pre-procedural mouth rinse next time you come in to see us for your dental visit. And then you end it. And then the next day, we're going to talk about, we're going to take you on a tour of our sterilization area. This is an autoclave. This is what an autoclave does. We test our autoclaves every 4 weeks. This is what we, all these things that we do. Let's show that to our patients, because that creates so much accountability, right? Now, what you've done is you've built value in your practice. You've shown the patient that you are being very patient-centered and you're mindful and you care about them. You're taking proactive steps. And now I think one of the biggest concerns or fears that dentistry always has is that patients are going to go, well, I didn't do that 6 months ago. So why, we're afraid to institute new products, procedures, protocols, tell a patient they need SRP because we did a prophy 6 months ago. We're afraid of those changes because we're afraid the patient's going to say something. Now let's get in front of that and say, these are the things we're doing in light of what's happening. And we're doing that to take care of you. And this will be something we will be doing moving forward. What a beautiful way to really, package that up for the community. And I have goosebumps thinking about it because I'm so excited.
Right? The ideas are popping. And I don't work in a dental practice, and I'm super excited about this. So, because I'm thinking this really, it really pulls out the technology.
Yeah.
So we're in an interesting time economically. We've all watched movies about the Great Depression or different things. I'm thinking this is not that. I was talking to my mom about that because she was a child during the Depression, and she said a major difference is we had no idea what was going on. They were so super isolated. So here we are, where it's almost we're the opposite, where we have almost too much coming at us.
Yeah.
And so let's harness that for in our businesses. I love this idea. Now I'm also thinking there are going to be some places in the country right now, as of March 20th, that are in a lockdown mode. They can't really necessarily move around. We can still move around freely here in Arizona today within reason. But so a doctor could go to their office and do this. And I love this idea, using their Facebook and LinkedIn and their social media to just be able to hop on and say, everybody else is at home too, right? They're all on their social media. Let's just use this time and
they're all bored,
right? I would love to see my doctor doing that. Any of my doctors, my vet, whoever, I'd love to see doing that.
Absolutely. Do a 5 minute.
So excited, Katrina.
I'm still I want to do one. I'm going to do one after this. But even 5 minutes on vitamin C and zinc and how those help to boost the immune system. Vitamin D, by the way, we've found to be huge in respiratory success. Do a 5-minute thing on vitamin D and the food items that you can, consume that are going to be rich and dense in vitamin D. Put together a silly little, pantry recipe, of foods that are rich in vitamin D that you can, put together. Do something fun. Keep your face out there. Keep your patients engaged. Keep them trusting and keep them mindful of the fact that you care about them and you're finding creative ways to stay connected to them, even though you cannot treat them with your hands.
I just love this. And I'm thinking, there's so many layers to this idea because our colleagues are clinicians.
Yeah.
They're speakers, consultants, they're planners. So if we break this out to different layers, so here we are talking to the doctor and the team, but you can also pull it back a layer to our colleagues that are speakers and consultants all across this world, really.
Yeah.
Definitely across North America. This gives those consultants something of value to take to check in, to super serve their existing and past clients, to say, here's an idea for you, doc. And here's how you do it. And most people have, I think, I could be off. I'm not a social media expert, but even as a boomer myself, I would assume that most people know how to use Facebook or to be able to do a live. And if not, it is easily available, and we definitely have social media experts that can guide that. But I think for our consulting colleagues out there to reach out to, no matter what they consult on, to stay in touch with those doctors they consult with now more than ever. And this is a really great idea,
Yeah.
to have them continue to stay in front of their patients. That really is a bottom line for me through everything for all of us. I saw something about Hilton's having to close out hotels, and I thought, it's going to be important for them to stay in front of me. Southwest Airlines stays in front of me with how they're cleaning. Costco stays in front of me with what
Yes.
their store hours are.
Yes.
It's no different for us right now, and to really bring people the information that they need. So I feel like we are preaching. I'm feeling
Oh
super
my
excited.
gosh. I feel like
We're having this a little bit of might be my internet, might be. There we go.
It might be mine.
And it might be because it looks like we're going to rain here in Phoenix here in a minute again.
Oh my gosh, it's going to rain in the desert.
Storm coming in. But I think we're probably going to need to wrap us up here pretty soon. So let me ask you, was there anything more about the future of dentistry we didn't cover that we should have?
I think the final piece that I want to walk away with is being mindful not only of our infection control, but knowing that the work that we do is impactful. I think there have been a lot of questions that I've seen on social media from my colleagues about is dentistry a necessary procedure, right? Because when governments issue and say emergent versus non-emergent, what does that look like? There are a lot of people that say, well, dentistry isn't a necessary procedure. And I think I know, yeah, but it kind of makes me want to shake my colleagues. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is what we're fighting for every day, is to show how valuable, important. How many times do you share something on Facebook? Like, did you know that, Porphyromonas gingivalis has been, detected in stage 3, stage 4 pancreatic cancers, Alzheimer's? I mean, all these things that we're starting to find about, the bacterial links in the mouth and how that's linked to the rest of the body. What we're doing is impactful and it is important. And if nothing else, I think my fear is that dentistry is going to step in and they may tweak some of their infection control pieces. Doctors who haven't been using hand sanitizer before treating patients, I think patients are going to be looking and waiting for you to use your hand sanitizer and dry off your hands or wash your hands at the sink, which is always like number one, before putting your gloves on. I do think dentistry will move that way. I don't think that's an outlandish expectation, but I do fear that dentistry is going to take a step back and feel as though patients now are not going to be accepting treatment to manage their oral disease because they won't have the funds for it, because they were out of work. Do you know what I mean? And what I want dentistry to understand is that what we are doing is so impactful. When we learn that diseases like hypertension and diabetes elevate our patients' risk for COVID-19 right now, and then we read articles seeing that, for example, periodontal therapy knowingly reduces hemoglobin A1C counts in our diabetic patients, we have to acknowledge that we're a vital component to the healthcare system. And so I don't want dentistry taking a step back. I want dentistry to use this as an opportunity to take a step forward and go, how can we do better? How can we rise together? How can we initiate diagnostics sooner? How can we fearlessly make these treatment prescriptions to the patient? How can we find the ways to be able to educate our patients on the value of what it is that we bring from an active therapy and a preventive standpoint? And so that is my hope for dentistry. And it is my hope for medicine as well, that we create a new culture for our patients, one where there is an expectation that we are going to educate you on what is going on in your mouth or going on with your body, and that we're going to provide you the opportunity to be able to address that under our care.
Love that. Love that. So let me just recap what I think I'm hearing you say is that really, if I was going to boil that down, it would be like part of it's the communication skills, which means we need to have those already, those talking points, and we need to, so that we, case presentation, and that piece of this, we're able to share why it's important to be able to help people tap into that. So another idea of what we can do now as we move into the future then would be to include those kind of trainings as we're meeting for our weekly Zoom call, or however we stay in touch over however long this is. Especially if it were to be something that would be extended on, what a great time to educate the team so that we can all come back united with a similar goal and with a similar languaging and with a similar understanding of how we are going to hit the ground running, hop on the horse that's galloping, whatever analogy we want to use. Oh, Katrina, it always fills my buckets to spend time with you. This is just like so much fun.
I could sit and talk to you all. Well, we have done that before, have we not?
We'll do that once we turn the video off, because they're probably tired of hearing us now. But I want to thank several people that were hung with us the whole time here. Michael Clark with Care Credit has been giving us some really great ideas. And thank you, Mike. We love you. And we've got Alan Stern here. We love you too, Alan. You're just so awesome. And he said he really loves this idea of having the reps come in and maybe even checking with other teams at how they're doing. I love that we had Candace here at one point, another jump starter. We love you too, Candace, and thank you so much for being here today. And I hope I didn't miss any questions out in here, but I think we are going to have to call it. So if we do have any questions for Katrina, you can certainly thanks for being here, Alan.
Oh, Alan, he's so awesome.
Can certainly put them here in our comments, and we'll watch this afterwards and get back to you. But Katrina, you're such a wealth of knowledge. As I'm listening to you, I'm like, you're clearly like that science geek girl that like in school I would have looked at you and thought, why can't I understand it like you understand it? Because you're like throwing out these terms. I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. It sounds important.
This is like, the funny thing is, although I am like literally quarantined, we didn't share this on the air, but I was in Europe when the travel ban happened. And so I am like on a quarantine technically. But I do this anyways. Like, I'm a total nerd. I'm single. I'm a loser. So I literally just sit at home and I read about Porphyromonas gingivalis and Fusobacterium nucleatum. It's like what I do. And it brings me a lot of joy. But
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, but you know what? In no way do I mean to demean you as much as I love it. I love it because we really, we need to have this knowledge. Is what I was thinking. I love that our members of our community, our speakers and consultants in the Bureau or our Dental Speaker Institute, or people who have such a vast knowledge on different topics to share, all really valuable. So I want to make sure that if someone's looking for more information, it looks like Alan beat me to this. Alan, you're reading my mind. He says, can we have Katrina's contact information?
Yeah, totally.
I was just going there, that we want to be sure to know how can we get a hold of you. But could you also just really briefly share with us, because, I've had meeting planners reaching out to me already at the Bureau saying, do you have speakers who can train virtually right now and who can help us in other ways? And so just give us a brief idea of like what type of topics do you also speak on? And then could you give us your contact information?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Alan. You're so amazing. And I will totally give you my contact info. I am a dental hygienist by trade. And so I do a lot of training that is very hygiene centered. But I have, over the past 9 months, really stepped out of that into really doing full team trainings. So I love speaking on perio because I work in a perio practice and I do a lot of consulting for the perio practice. I lecture on the 2018 AAP staging and grading. I am accredited and licensed by the ADA to be able to deliver content on the CDT coding and billing. So I do deliver that content in tandem. I speak on the oral systemic link because I'm very passionate about that. I speak on infection control because I'm a major microbiome nerd and I love it and I totally geek out on it. And my favorite thing is at the beginning of all of my infection control talks, people are like, oh, because they have to do it. You're like required by the state to take infection control. And by the end of the course, people are like, I had no idea I would be like laughing and having fun during it. That's one of my favorite like things to be able to do during my infection control program, because I think it's so fun to be able to take something so dry and make it, just bright. And then I also love speaking on a local anesthesia. I have a program where we talk about all of the alternative injections, troubleshooting the ones that maybe we're struggling with right now. I have a new program on disease prevention and control called The Future Is Now. It's so new and hot off the presses. It's not in my speaker packet currently, but I have been delivering it for study clubs. And it goes over all of the new futuristic trends that we're going to start seeing in the control of disease and prevention. And then, of course, this was actually initiated by the fabulous Vanessa Emerson, is my keynote called When Good Dentistry Is Not Enough. And it's a very heartfelt and honest program about the things that we need to do in the dental and medical communities to be able to rise and serve our patients in a very impactful way. And I do have an agreement where any study clubs that hire me for that particular keynote, my entire honorarium is donated back to the state of Wisconsin Organ and Tissue Donation Foundation in loving memory of my late mother, Linda Sanders. So those are all just incredible opportunities that I have to be able to reach people. My contact info. Shoot me an email because literally I have nothing else going on. That's not true. I'm building out webinars like crazy. That's actually not true. But
I was just saying, you've been on Facebook all day, right?
Yeah,
on that side of the camera.
I'm everywhere. But shoot me an email, Katrina@KatrinaSanders.com, and I can totally put it in the comments, or maybe my assistant Steven's watching now and he can do it. But Katrina@KatrinaSanders.com. You can email my assistant if you don't get me right away, and that is info@KatrinaSanders.com. You can find me on Facebook at The Dental Wine Genist, and you can also find me on Instagram at The Dental Wine Genist. I'm on LinkedIn, Katrina M. Sanders, RDH. BSDH MEDRF. It's a lot of letters. Sorry. And you can reach Huey. He doesn't have any social media platforms at all, but
he's in the backyard digging to China.
He's digging to China with his little sugar beard. So you can see, but Huey does show up on my social media. And one of the things that I am doing right now on Instagram, IGTV, is I'm doing fun videos with my assistant, Steven. You know, they're little quick segments just to brighten everybody's day. We don't talk science. We just sip wine and have a really delightful time. And so if you just need something to give your brain and your heart and your soul a little bit of a break from all of the stress, please pop in and by all means join us for some fun because I think we all need that right now.
Yeah. Definitely. So we're getting lots of comments from our pals that are watching here. Alan wants to hook you up with his son, just saying.
Is he single?
That's what he says. My son,
okay.
We hope he's single.
My type is single and rich. So if he's
there you go.
We're good.
There you go. And Michael's letting us know that the sad thing is that we don't get to see your awesome green shiny pants when we do these versus our in-person.
This is the thing with webinars, and I think any speaker consultant out there can totally laugh about it because it's true. Sometimes I'm not even wearing pants. Like it's just you're a shirt, and then you curl the front parts of your hair. I call it the webinar mullet because it's just the front part, the back, and then you're good. And it's really great.
There you go. And on that note, thanks so much, Katrina, for sharing such the time with us, sharing your knowledge, sharing a laugh with us. It feels good at the end of a Friday after a week where we're just kind of like, it seems like it's been 2 months since last Wednesday.
I know.
But yet I also want to leave with my firm belief we're going to emerge from this stronger than ever. I think in dentistry, we have got it going on, and we always have, and it is the best place. I would not want to work in any other industry. We have the best people in the world here, and they do come together. They do support each other, and we offer really vital services. So there's no way that we're not going to come out of this. And so I just want to encourage everybody to hang tough. We've got this. Reach out. If you ever want to talk, reach out to me at info@dentalspeakersbureau.com if you're looking for speakers for any kind of virtual meetings or our in-person meetings. Or we also, many of our speakers offer online recorded courses. There's just a lot of options right now for our doctors and clinical people who are needing to get their CE. There's a lot of options. So just remember to stay hopeful. Oh, and I think Ellen's going to probably have to write you later afterward. I'll let you guys take care of that offline with the hookup. We've been trying to set these guys up here. But thanks again for being here, Katrina. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this special edition of The Buzz. Be well, and hang in there, and we will see you online. Yeah. Take care, everybody. And thanks again, Katrina.
Thank you.
Bye.